What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Geek Boutique podcast. That's right. My name is JS. This guy is Messiah Complex Cosplay, Akka. We call him Akka around here.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm doing this quick because we've got a special guest with us today. That's right. We've got I forget it again now.
Every time.
Capture performance actor.
Still not that.
Still not right. Performance capture actor.
There you go. Performance capture
artist. Allan Henry is with us today. What's up, Allan? Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Alan, he's French. I don't know what to tell you. There's a whole everything's backwards. It's all I love him to pieces, but yeah, Uncle Jeff, I was just beginning to fear it was just Jay. No. We are all here, and we are blessed to be joined by Allan Henry today. For those of you that don't know, we got to meet Allan in late September, early October.
Yes,
at the Northern National Collector Convention. Allan flew all the way in from New Zealand to join us at the convention because there was a huge presence for both King Kong and Godzilla, of course, with Godzilla versus Kong. So Allan was there representing the Kong side of things, I believe. Yeah. And and we got to meet Allan, and we hit it off, and we were like, hey, do you want to be on our stupid little geeky podcast? And he ridiculously said yes. So here we are.
It makes sense because I'm
put
a
it together here.
Geek, so.
And then we spent most of the pre-show just geeking out over his sweater, and then we got off on this huge topic about tabletop RPG games. So our pre-interview style is not fantastic, guys. You guys know this. We'll just fumble our way through this, and I'm sure Alan's going to bail us out on a few of these things. But
that's okay. That's okay. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about the different roles or productions that you've been in, because you've been in so much stuff. I mean, it boggled my mind when I went through your IMDb, your agency profile. You've got, there's so freaking much there. It's crazy. But the main thing's obviously Kong, Godzilla versus Kong, as well as the new Godzilla X-Con, the new Empire. Your Steppenwolf in Justice League. Were you in for both the Snyder version and the original version? Yeah. There we go.
Version,
You're Koki, our favorite cocaine bear.
Yeah.
And then you did a bunch of stuff on Planet of the Apes, the Hobbit series, Alita, Avatar, the Avengers. I mean, you did a bunch of stuff for Marvel. I mean, it feels like when I'm looking at the list of films you were part of, if it's a big budget blockbuster movie that's come out in the last 7 or 8 years, you were somehow a part of it.
Yeah. It's I mean, the joys of living in New Zealand, because New Zealand is so tiny. When a giant project like Avatar or The Hobbit turns up, everyone's going to eventually be in it. And because I have such a strong working relationship with Weta FX here in New Zealand, I've been able to be involved in almost every project they've had running since 2010, 2007. Yeah.
So you've been in the game a long time. And then for the viewers that are tuning in, they're going to be watching this and watching it later, Allan, if you could describe to us, what is a performance capture artist? What is it that you do to bring a character to life for a movie?
So yeah, for those who don't know, performance capture, I'm the guy in the gray lycra suit covered in dots, moving around in a studio. And my movement is used as data for visual effects artists to create digital characters, like superheroes or monsters or creatures or 9-year-old kids or little elves or big robots. That's me.
And the process, when we were talking about it earlier, you mentioned that a lot of the time it actually happens in post-production. It happens once principal photography is done, just to incorporate that. Does that give you a chance to see a little bit of what your character is going to represent? Does that help you to kind of gauge your performance or get you into the character when it comes time to bring that character to life in your motions and movements?
Yeah, yes, it does, because we get a lot of the footage that's already been shot, and most of it is, the set is there, the costumes there, the actors there. You can kind of get the gist of what they're trying to do. But also, when we're doing performance capture, we have large monitors around us that are giving us real-time feedback of the digital characters in the scene. And over the years, the technology, you can spy it in the back there of that. Over the years, the technology is getting so much more, like it's so much more advanced and so much more intense. Now they can live comp myself into fully rendered scenes.
Yeah, even the TV in the
real time?
background, that's happening in real time. Like we're actually seeing your motions already rendered on the screen in real time. That's wild.
Yeah, and that's just on what's known as GenMan, just the generic kind of human. They can, if they have access to the asset, the digital asset, they can show you it. So I can wander around as a transformer or as an Avenger or as a weird bat, scorpion, spider creature, and you can kind of see how it moves and reacts and adjust your performance accordingly.
I was just going to say, you get that instant feedback, right? So even not just for you, but for the director, like as you guys are trying to, you know, I'm assuming when you're doing these things, you need to get from point A to point B, right? In your scene, you can get to point B in 100 different directions, right? So being able to get that real-time feedback will really help guide you into what exactly it is that you do. I was somehow, and this is me perhaps being naive here, but when you see footage of, for example, Andy Serkis playing Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, where he's actually on set with the actors in the suit playing Gollum, I, in my mind, assumed you were mainly on set as well. But I guess before you were saying, not really. For you guys, it's mainly in studio.
Yeah, it's 50-50. It depends on what the production needs. For Cocaine Bear, I was on set the whole time.
Oh, that's awesome.
But that, because the requirement for the job was for me to be a physical presence for the actors so that they could kind of see, like, I mean, yes, the camera needed it for composition because they could see where I move and how I move, and VFX would use me as a almost like a template reference for where the bear was. But also for the actors, it's like, it's one thing to imagine the bear is there, but it's a little bit easier for the imagination when you've got like a 6 foot tall, like, you know, 95 kg dude crashing through the trees towards you, roaring and snarling. I mean, I don't look that much like a bear, which is I say that much. Like there's a decent amount of hair all over the place, but like it's a real testament to the actors I was working with, to their imagination, because they, within like the moment I walked on set in my tight black lycra with my silly arm extensions and my little head extension, like it is one of the most ridiculous things you've ever seen, and everyone gets very awkward and weird and laughs at it for about 2 minutes. And then, you know, everyone is so professional, we just get into the work. And then before you know it, everyone has just kind of suspended their disbelief and they've bought in, and they're, you know, Kerry Russell is screaming her head off. And like Isaiah Whitlock is up on a roof being like, God damn. So it's like everyone is in there with you. So and it's very easy to like, for me to just kind of let 8-year-old Allan take over and just have a good time pretending to be this monster or this bear.
And I think that's what a lot of the reactions that we're getting so far from the people watching. What a cool gig. I don't have better words. It's so cool. Sounds like such a cool job. It's amazing. Cool. You get to be King Kong. But one of the questions that we're obviously going to lead off from a lot of this when we're talking about is how did you get into this work? I would imagine, I did go over some of your stuff. You did have some theater work early on, and I can't imagine that hurts. I mean, having that theater background must help you getting into these characters and being this physical and being this emotive with the characters. So how did you get into the line of work, Allan?
It's a like, it sounds like a cliche, but it's a combination of luck and stacking the deck in your favor. So being in the right place at the right time, talking to the right people is like probably a large part of it. But as a young person, when I was growing up, I was physical. I did dance and gymnastics, and I rode BMXs off sand dunes, and I climbed trees, you know, and I tried to run faster than my friends. All of that physical stuff that I did as a kid then translated into performance when I was older, because, you know, I come from a family that's very we're Maori, so we play a lot of music, we do a lot of singing, everyone's a bit of a show off, everyone has a good time at parties. So it kind of grew. And then when I did my theater training here in Wellington in New Zealand, physical performance was a big part of that. And I looked for opportunities where I could try to do the things that I saw on the movies that I liked. So I grew up watching a lot of like really wonderfully bad 80s action movies. So I was a huge fan of Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I remember watching Michael Dudikoff do the American Ninja.
American Ninja, yeah.
American Ninja. And
absolutely.
I was like, put me in one of those multicolored ninja suits and let me do the flips.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then that led to learning more about Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee and Jet Li and, Donnie Yen and all of that kind of physical performance fueled my desire to do the things that I wanted to do. So I looked at what they were doing and I did martial arts and I did parkour and I did, I did look for places where I could go rock climbing and things like that to get kind of stronger and more flexible and then just kind of let geeky, nerdy little 8-year-old Allan take over, because, so often the world is get a job, get decent money. And, the rational part of me is that would be a good idea. But then, then 8-year-old Allan is but what if we pretended to be a superhero?
Do you remember that first gig that was kind of the turning point for you where you're this is the first check you got for work that you did in this particular industry?
Yeah, it was a 3-part process. I had arrived at theater school, at drama school, and we were doing physical performance. And through that, one of my teachers had a connection with Peter Jackson and his wife Fran, and they were currently filming Pete's version of King Kong in Wellington. Of course.
Yeah.
So my tutor used her connections and called in some favors and took our entire class to see Andy Serkis in the studio.
Nice.
Working. And that was a moment where, 22-year-old Allan Henry, who came from a small town, from a very poor family, didn't have a lot of opportunity. That was the moment where I saw not only was my dream possible, but it was accessible. Because if it's in my town and the people I know are making it, there's a good chance that we can try and work together. And then following that, I started to ask, and Andy was an absolute treasure. He took a break during a take to come over and talk to us, and he sat with us and answered questions and really tried to make us realize that we were not special, but that we were worthy and important. He was like, I'm doing this, but I was there where you are. I was a drama student. I was a theater student. I was an acting student. So just because I'm here and you're there doesn't mean you can't make this transition. And he was really generous with his time and his support. And then we went back to drama school and I really focused on finding those people who were making that work and talking to them. And I tried to remember that it wasn't just about a sort of narcissistic networking kind of thing. It was more about they're making work that I want to be a part of. So how can I be a part of this community? And so I talked to filmmakers and I talked to VFX artists and I talked to prop builders and I talked to cosplayers and I talked to comic book nerds. And then I started to find my community. And then by the time I'd finished drama school, I got an audition through an agent for what was then the Halo movie that Neil Blomkamp was directing. He was directing it in Wellington. And I got an audition for the mocap team and I got selected.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, that film got canned because of all sorts of other decisions that none of us could control.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that job didn't happen. But the people that I'd been working with for only 2 days remembered who I was. And when more projects came up, they would put my name forward and be like, Allan's around. Allan's got some skill. He's got potential. And it just grew from there and grew from there. And it was never about trying, a lot of people will talk about the hustle in this industry. And that's part of it. But I think the hustle also has to be some, like, you can't just burn yourself trying to hustle. You got to, like, you have to build that community, because if you just come at it like a hustler trying to get the job and trying to make the money, I feel like it's difficult to build that support network for when that work gets difficult or thin on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in somewhere like New Zealand, where the industry is, we have an industry. It's not the biggest industry. And there are moments where the industry is very, very quiet. And that's when the locals start making their own work. And that's where your community supports you, when you're like, I don't have an entire film crew. I have friends who are on film crews. If we have time and resource, do we want to get together and make something? You know, and that's how Taika got his start. And that's how so many New Zealanders get their start. So it's about, for me, it was about building that community. And I remember back at the Northern National, I asked the same question to Doug, who was the super performer for Godzilla, in the '98 Godzilla film.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him the same question, and he said, put yourself where the work is. And I think that's the trick. Find out where the work you want to do is, try and get yourself there, and then talk to those people who are doing that and get to know them and find out if they are your people, if that is your community. And if it is, you know, then you can find ways of being a part of that community, and then you grow the opportunities from there.
I love what you're preaching about community. We in the cosplay community kind of have that same philosophy, and some don't. Kind of like what you're talking about. That hustle is they end up kind of like almost stepping on the people that they feel that they have to get to whatever that golden ring is. And if they don't get it, well, those people that you stepped on are not going to be there to help you out when you come down, because you treated them so poorly. So that's what we try to do in the cosplay community too. Is just keep building that community and giving that sense of community as much as we can. It's nice to hear you saying that. And clearly it has worked for you. Because now you've been in the industry for
over a decade.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem like, based on your credits on IMDb and through your site there, you haven't been wanting for work as of late anyways. I know with COVID and such, that obviously would have thrown some wrench in the work. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, and how that affected what you do, and how that affected productions as a whole during the blip, as a lot of us are calling it in the geek and nerd community?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the lockdown situation in New Zealand was very, very different to the rest of the world.
Oh, really?
So, well, just because of how strict our government was with the lockdown, we experienced a lot less tragedy than other countries. We were very fortunate to have a government that offered a lot of support to everyone who was on the lockdown. Like, I know a lot of other countries gave out stimulus checks. Our government was like, we will actually try and figure out a solution where everyone can survive and kind of have what they need. Because a lot of our stuff was, you know, you had to get it delivered and things like that. And we're such an import heavy country, being at the bottom of the planet, a lot of things that needed to be imported couldn't be. So a lot of focus came back to like local vendors and local, you know, like, we realized that a lot of what we need can be produced here. And then that kind of bled into the creative industries, where a lot of work grew from like lockdown Zoom calls, kind of similar to this, where people would just get on Zoom and be like, so I've got this idea. We obviously can't go out and film it. So what are some alternatives? And then other people would be like, well, you know, one of the coolest projects that came out of lockdown in New Zealand was a group of actors and musicians in New Zealand had a Zoom meeting like once a week, and they figured out how to each play a live instrument and replay the soundtrack to Little Shop of Horrors. So
Awesome.
they just created the show where they would live play, and like everyone was in time. They had rehearsals, and they had like they figured out the harmonies, and then they just chucked it online, and they're like 8 p.m. who wants to watch it? And you could like, they would share the dialogue from the film. Well, not even the film. Actually, they took all the audio out, and they just redid all the audio, the songs, the Foley, the dialogue. It was great.
Awesome.
And then we were lucky because we had a government at the time that was like, gave us the time and the money and the resources for creative people to pursue that.
Yeah.
You know, which is like a clear example of like, hey, it's almost like art improves lives. And if people are supported and have security, they're going to pursue fulfilling art. And then, of course, that same government was like, yeah, but also,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Stay inside. Don't do it.
Pay our CEOs. Come on. You know.
JS, I feel like I'm hogging all Alan's time. Please get in there and ask
that's quite
questions,
fine. We got Megan over here saying, I love that. I love the thought of people walking by you and not knowing you're the actor behind some of these iconic roles. So nuts. And yeah, is that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I would feel about the fact that I was in all these movies and when there was all these iconic characters, but nobody knows who the hell I am. Yeah, I feel like when you get into a situation where, like you were saying, now you've got this big name Hollywood actor who might be voicing a role. Do you feel like you kind of take the back seat when something like that happens? Like, how does that impact you mentally when you're preparing for a role like that?
It's a double-edged sword, because the joy of working in performance capture is you can be anything, because it doesn't matter what you look like. What matters is how can you move? Can you move the way the character moves? But also, yeah, I feel like I'm not exactly sure how these decisions get made, but it feels like the studios have to back someone, and a lot of the time projects will always bank on like star power and draw power. Sometimes they take a risk, like what Elizabeth Banks did with Cocaine Bear, which I'm very grateful for. And a lot of my other roles that I've done via performance capture, a lot of the time the press only comes about because Weta Effects will go out of their way to mention my name. And I think it's just because at the moment we're still in this gray area where we aren't quite sure how to define what performers like myself do, especially because I can't claim to be the only person who played Iron Man in the Avengers films. There were like 6 of us, right? Doing performance capture for various bits and pieces. So when I say that I'm Kong, that's me saying, as far as I know, I did the majority of the performance capture for the film. I'm definitely part of a fraternity of big monster performers. And I remember watching a podcast you guys did earlier with is it Steve, the guy who does Groot?
Yes, he's in there right now talking about
it. Yeah. And you were talking about that idea of like, if you have a cosplay and someone's like, I also have this cosplay, the idea is that it's more fun to acknowledge that a bunch of us have this cosplay, and isn't that great?
Yep.
Which is something that I try to do with performance capture. It's like it wasn't just me being this character. There were also these other people that did it, and we were part of a team to kind of put forward this show. And I'm not sure how, like, so many of these decisions get made above my pay grade, which means I don't have any input, but also there's no real recourse for me. It's more about me just being like, hey, hi everyone, I'm Allan Henry. This is the thing that I did.
I mean, hey, you're still cashing the check. And every now and then,
I'm cashing one of the checks.
That's what I'm saying, right? And every now and then, sometimes the anonymity must also be a benefit. It can't always be it must sometimes be you're not getting swamped. You can go outside to buy groceries. You can live a quote unquote normal, at least not mobbed life by having a certain level of anonymity. But still, you also get flown over to Windsor, Ontario, Canada to be part of a convention, and that's where we get to meet you. So. Yeah, I feel like it's definitely bridging the gap. Help me out though, because I remember when we met you. I think we actually got to talk to you a little bit when we went to the after party out to a bar. And when I asked you what you did, you described it, and I said motion capture, and you were correct me to say it was performance capture. And are those two different things, Alan, or is it just a more accurate description of one thing?
They're two different things now.
Okay. So can you tell us the difference between what is performance capture and motion capture?
So motion capture is literally just capturing the motion. So it's just movement. A lot of the time, performance capture is about trying to find the performance. So the way that the character moves and breathes and rests and stands and looks around, as well as what they're emotionally doing on the face. Like for instance, for Kong was always performance capture. Even though Kong doesn't have dialogue, they were using a witness camera to record my face.
Oh yeah, he emotes like
yeah, and because that's the only place he can.
Yeah.
And Weta were very, like, they have an incredible team of motion editors and facial animators, and they were making sure that all of his emotion was coming through the face. But you can't deny that a holistic performance encompasses the body, even if you don't see it. What we're seeing now with performance capture is that you've got 84 cameras looking at you 100% of the time, and you can see it. You can see the performance in the body, and you can see it. You know, the minute an actor drops out of character, because the technology is so precise. You can see when their attention drifts or their breathing changes. And sometimes we get pulled into gigs to do motion capture, which is just like, we need 40 people running down a street, and we're just going to do take after take after take after take. That's motion capture, and that's valuable because that's still creating content and assets for the film. But performance capture is when they go down to the nitty gritty. For instance, for Steppenwolf, they were like, Kieran Hines has done all the voice, all the dialogue. What we need is we need the movements in Steppenwolf's body to match that dialogue, because the character is speaking them.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't just walk on and be like, I'm a big tough guy, look at me. I have to look at and listen to what Kieran Hines is doing, and then try to essentially find the same emotional beats for Steppenwolf.
And like we talked earlier, that's the advantage
mind.
you doing it in post, right? Like that's the cool part, is you get that point of reference, right?
Yeah.
I think something just clicked in my mind. And for me, I think what you're trying to say, what makes more sense to me, is motion capture versus performance capture. You put Tony Hawk in a ball suit while he's skateboarding so that you can replicate that in the video game. That's motion capture. He's not acting, he's not portraying a character, but once you put in that character portrayal in, is when I think it really becomes more performance capture, because it's no longer just about capturing those motions for a database. It's actually about acting. You're actually acting there.
And I think also you could make the argument that now motion capture doesn't exist anymore, because really it is just performance capture. Like,
well, even
if it's Tony Hawk skateboarding, it's still a performance. That's still.
Yeah. I was thinking of Man of Steel, Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. Michael Shannon. Oh, by the way, a lot of people don't know this because it was so flawless. There were two main Kryptonians, Michael Shannon's character of Zod, and then Feora. Feora's suit was an actual suit they made. Michael Shannon is in a dot suit the whole time.
Yeah,
Michael Shannon's Kryptonian armor is fully CG. It's flawless. But when you and I were talking and you made that distinction, I'm like, I'm wondering if that's more what motion capture is, because it's literally just capturing the motion of his body and then putting that CG suit on him, because he's wearing a dot suit as well and everything else. But he's not really, I mean, I'm sure he's kind of trying to change his motions to make it look like he's wearing this big bulky suit of armor, but that's how I kind of equate it. Because as soon as you corrected to me, like, okay, now I understand. Now I get it. Like, you're not just, like you said, just watch that video that you were showing us when you've got the hand things on, so that you're literally walking like an ape and performing all of that. First of all, you must be in terrific shit. Like, how much training do you have to, dude? I'm watching you walk on those hands things, and the whole time I'm thinking my back would be
I could never do that.
Like, how do you physically prepare for something like that? Like, how do you keep yourself in the kind of shape that you need to be able to do something like that on it? Because how long are you in a studio on those things doing that for?
If it's a full day, it can be anywhere up to 10 hours, but we take breaks. One of the glories of motion capture and performance capture is that you can take downtime, because this, like, setups between shots can be really fast, but because of that, you can also take more time in between. Like when we're doing, like if we're doing ape stuff or monster stuff on arm extensions, if it's intense work, then we'll take like 3 to 4 minutes to just sit and get some water and kind of stretch it out. When you're on set, time constraints get a bit different, and that can be a hell of a time. When we're on set for the Hobbit trilogy, I was doing some of the goblins, and they're, as a character, physically, they're the most inefficient characters ever.
Yeah.
Because their bodies are broken and nothing works and they're all tense. So to put a human in that shape for 8 hours,
No way.
just messes
No
with
way.
them. So we were really like, we were struggling on that. And that was, I remember for something like The Hobbit, we knew we were going to be doing long days and we knew it was going to be tough. So as a team, in the lead up to those days, we would all just be working out and training and like doing cardio and just lifting weights just to get our bodies stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't always the hulking Adonis you see before you.
Allan fits right in, guys.
I was a real weed when I started on The Hobbit because I was lean. I'd come out of drama school and I'd been active, and then working on The Hobbit, talking to some of the stunt team, they were like, "It's get strong or die, brother." Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
So for that job, I had to get bigger and stronger, and I ate a lot more chicken and like lifted a lot more heavy things. And then after The Hobbit, I kind of tried to find a balance between being strong but also flexible enough that I could still do all the weird creaturey things that they needed me to do. I wouldn't say I'm in the best shape. I mean, like I love burgers and milkshakes too much. I don't want to destroy the happiness in my life for the sake of a physique that maybe people will enjoy. But also, I always need to get fitter because I'm getting older now and I still want to do the things that I want to do. So it's like I have to kind of try and find a nice balance.
The nice happy medium.
Yeah, nice happy medium. And then you've got, all of the nonsense that the world shoves on you, and like depression's a hell of a ride and you got to find your way through it. Thankfully, again, support networks, community, loved ones, therapy, all of that stuff helps to keep me like, on top of what I need to do.
And
nice
nice sweaters.
Hey, thanks, Sonny.
Sonny is saying nice sweater, Allan. Absolutely. Our friend Top Cosplay says, "Hi, Allan. Happy holidays." So Top Cosplay is Teresa. She was
remember
the
Teresa.
photographer. Of course, she was the photographer at the Northern National. So that's Top Cosplay. She's part of our team and everything else. Megan is also part of our team. Megan Marie, she does have a question. There was something with dialogue. Would you be lip syncing while doing your performance, or do they have facial recording of the dialogue actor's face?
Ideally, they will try and give you as much as they can. Steppenwolf, we had all of the footage of Kieran doing his lines. And I would just listen to it on playback and try to copy his rhythm and his tone and I'd talk with the animation supervisor and get notes about what his character was doing. They could, like, yes, you can lip sync if you want. I just go full balls to the wall and go do full dialogue anyway, because for me, that's the only way I can kind of get it inhabiting in my body.
The character, of course.
Yeah.
So
I make noises. When I was Koki, I was snarling and snuffling and burping and roaring.
Well, I'm sure the actors appreciated that too, because like you said, you're on set interacting with them live, so you're helping to dispel that disbelief or whatever. I want to ask you a question, guys. I'm going to get a little bit. I'm not going to go off topic, but I want to get a little bit. I said I was going to get a little bit more into this. So I am a huge DC nerd. That's just who I am and where I live. And staying completely respectful. You were on set essentially for all of the original shooting of Zack Snyder. So how did it work for you with Justice League? Because we talked in the pre-show, you were technically part of both productions, but it's almost kind of like it was almost 3 productions, because there was production as it went up until Zack had to leave due to the tragic death of his daughter. And then Joss came in and essentially finished it while doing a whole bunch of reshoots and adding a lot more to it. And then, of course, that gets released. And then Zack gets a chance to come back and do more things and do a lot of the a lot of VFX work to finish it out. And Warner Brothers gave him a bunch of money to do that. So could you give us, like, don't give us a whole walkthrough. I'm kind of curious from your perspective, though, if you were there for like both instances, can you talk about a little bit like the differences between those two experiences a little bit?
It was, funnily enough, it was that, again, it was all post. Like I wasn't on set for principal photography, but doing the performance capture for the first version and then for the Snyder version, we were kind of in contact with Zack's 2IC DJ essentially for both projects.
Okay.
So DJ was giving us notes for the first version, and then also once Snyder came back, he was giving us notes for the second one. And the only shift we noticed, like our workload didn't change, our requirements didn't change. What we noticed was the storytelling changes from Zach, which required reshoots of entire sequences. And it was the biggest thing. I mean, for me, my main focus, I think, was probably on what was changing with Steppenwolf. Because there was also I think in the later version, Darkseid had a bigger presence as well, and we did some stuff.
And you were also Darkseid.
We did some stuff for Darkseid. So that for me, that was the biggest kind of change. Just the fact that we had different story beats coming from Zach.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was still me in the gray suit with my friends.
Still doing your thing. It didn't really change on your side a whole lot.
So when go ahead. So when Zack Snyder comes back in and Warner Brothers gives him a bunch of money to finish his version of the movie, do you guys go back into studio to reshoot some stuff as well, or is he just using the original stuff you had already done in the first place?
No, we reshot a lot of it.
You did, eh?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because I think they gave him $70 million. Like they gave him quite a bit of chunk of money to finish the film. So
yeah. I mean, they didn't give me $70 million.
No. We all work for what we all work for, right? That's kind of how it goes, I guess. But
so there was some stuff they could reuse, but a lot of it they just reshot it.
Yeah.
Because honestly, a lot of the time it's easier and faster to reshoot it.
Yeah, and I think he was pretty adamant as well. I think they had asked when Zach was coming back if he was going to use any of the footage that Whedon had shot specifically for the theatrical release, and he didn't want to use a single second of it. So he wanted everything to be completely his vision. So there's no way that you guys weren't going to get called back in, I would assume, because you had literally brand new characters. You had like brand new performance caption character, Darkseid, Decide, like you had new characters that either had no presence or very little presence in the theatrical release. So
there was a big story change to that final confrontation as well, where Soups turns up. Like that was like there were big changes that we had to address.
Yeah,
not in terms of character-wise or story-wise, but literally they changed the digital, like the virtual camera.
Right.
They were like, we're shooting this from a completely different side now.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, okay.
Do you always go back and watch the finished product, Alan? Or sometimes it's just like that project's done, I've gotten paid, I'm good. I don't necessarily need to see what that finished product looks like. Or do you kind of be like, no, I want to see how this turned out?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Because I am the first to admit that what I do in the studio is not what ends up on the screen. What ends up on the screen is my foundation gets built upon and finessed and improved by Weta effects. Like what they did with Kong and with Koki was phenomenal.
Yeah, crazy.
I love watching them work because they're also not just my colleagues, but they're friends of mine now.
Yeah.
Like we all have kids the same age. We all hang out together and stuff. So to go and see their work, what they've helped, like what I helped them to achieve, is fantastic. And the motion edit supervisor on the New Empire was this guy named Dave Preciado, and he and I would have big conversations about the work that needs to happen and from what I do. So I do watch them. Like we did Christmas Chronicles 2. I watched it because we did the elves, and my son Gus, who was 8 at the time, came in and did some elf stuff. So I took him along, and I was like, "That's you and me."
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
And even films that weren't that great that we worked on, I'll still go and see it.
Okay.
Because
do you have a favorite of the films you've been part of, or characters that you've portrayed? And I know it's like picking a favorite child. I mean, we're not saying that one's better and the rest are terrible, but I'm wondering if there's one, especially after you've done the work and you've seen it, did one kind of hit you harder than than the rest of them, or affected you more emotionally?
For me, it's honestly, it's Kong, Koki, and the work we did on the BFG. The BFG was like one of my favorite books growing up, and I love
It's Spielberg,
role as well. Yeah.
yeah.
We shot that in Vancouver and Burnaby.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I got to be on set for that one. I was like, I was working with my movement teacher Terry Notary as his assistant movement coach.
Oh, nice.
Were you
And
the
then,
giant?
we did performance capture for a number of characters.
I'll bet.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Did you get to meet Spielberg?
I did.
Oh,
I did.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was on set. He's lovely. He really is.
Yeah.
And you know, I had some friends. My good friend Jermaine Clement was working on it as well, so he and I hung out a lot.
From Flight of the Conchords, Jermaine Clement, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, dude, it's New Zealand. There's like 20 of us here. We all know each other. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so BFG, because it was one of those childhood things.
Mm-hmm.
Koki, because it was just so stupid and so wonderfully lovely to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Kong, because I've always wanted to be.
Because you're King GD Kong, for goodness sake. I mean, come on, man.
Now,
there are a lot of roles that I did that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Because you're not only doing performance capture, you've also done some live action roles.
Yeah.
Specifically, you were in a TV series. Is it Mean Mums?
Oh yeah, Mean Mums. Yep.
Mean Mums
as a goofy primary school principal.
And Sweet Tooth.
I was, yeah.
Now,
that's where I first met Christian Convery.
Is that done?
Sweet Tooth, as far as I know, yeah.
It's not coming back.
Nobody knows yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah. I see you looking into the right there. I hope I'm not spoiling anything there.
No, this is great.
We're still good. We can tell you guys that we did have to wait a little bit for the interview because Allan does have a current project in production in New Zealand. And that, guys, look at me. That's all we can say.
Yeah.
Okay?
It is.
Allan was very careful and clear. He checked the email, the latest he's gotten. That's all we can say. There is a current production in New Zealand that Allan's a part of. That's it. That's all we can say. So keep your eyes tuned. Guys, Allan, why don't you give them your we'll do it at the end too, but why don't you give them your social media so they can follow you along and get some updates on when you can finally talk about some of this stuff.
I mean, yeah, I think the only social media presence I have is on Instagram as Allan Henry _official.
Yeah. That's
where I'll post anything connected to the work I've been doing.
Yep.
I mean, the rest, the OnlyFans is private, so
it's really just him in that sweater playing tabletop RPGs.
There you go.
So that's all it is.
Spoiler alert.
I know that because I'm a subscriber. So I mean, make sure plug down your $5 a month for that, kids. You're not going to want to miss that.
I want to talk about, well, first of all, your next big release is Godzilla X Con: The New Empire. You were saying that's now been filmed for a while. I guess, was that before the pandemic or during the pandemic you guys are filming that? Or no, you were saying it finished just last year.
Yeah. I think they wrapped up principal photography like last year.
Because
we were doing performance capture for it start of this year, maybe even end of last year. And we officially finished our performance capture in like September, just before I came over to the Northern Nashville.
Now, if anybody's seen the new trailer, obviously a lot of this movie is going to happen in Hollow Earth. There's a bunch of CG characters in this. Are you only Kong in this, or you're a bunch of different CG characters?
We got him in the studio, guys. He's wearing the suit. Get him to do lots of stuff.
Yeah. So
you joke, but
no, I guarantee that's probably what happens, right? You know what you're doing. You're experienced. You're in the suit. They've already got you wired up. Why wouldn't they have you doing more than one character, right?
Exactly.
Just through efficiency, that would make sense. But you're clearly good at what you do, because they keep bringing you back. And we've seen your work through our eyes anyways. And now we've got that video that we showed earlier. Guys, if you're just tuning in now, if you go to Allan's Instagram, he's got a video up there from Weta Digital showcasing some of the work that he's done as a performance capture artist. And it's, I don't know, man, fascinating.
It's only a small bit.
Yeah.
It is.
I wish I could, like, I'm constantly trying to get more of the witness camera footage and like work in progress footage of the stuff we have. But there's honestly, like, Weta at the moment, I think Weta has like 11 projects going.
Oh, wow.
New Zealand is about to have 8 more projects next year in the pipes. So,
and is a lot of this thanks to Pete Jackson? I mean, did he really, like with Lord of the Rings movies, did he really put New Zealand on the map as a place to come and film? Like, because so many of what he did in that trilogy showcased just how diverse of a landscape that New Zealand offers for people visually and artistically to film in. Was there a huge presence in New Zealand as far as filming big production movies before Pete Jackson brought the Lord of the Rings trilogy there?
Not a huge presence.
No.
There was some.
Yeah.
But
But like you said, there's only 20 of you in the business, so it's not like you know what I mean. You, Carl Urban, some other guys. That's it.
Yeah, it's me, Carl, Jermaine, Taika.
Yeah, exactly.
Pete, someone. But no, post Lord of the Rings trilogy, that was the explosion.
Yeah,
and that saw a lot more big projects come into New Zealand, and it was, it was a real injection for our industry as well, because when a big production arrives, they need more crew, they need more people to be in it. So a lot of New Zealanders started getting some on-the-job training and some like really good experience working with professionals. And I remember way back in 2008, working on the first Avatar film, there were people there who were like just entering the industry in the crew. And, I then worked on the most recent Avatar films, and they're like heads of department now.
Right.
Because
they've grown with the industry.
Right.
Yeah. So since 2008, they've been working, building that community, building those skills and that experience. And now it's growing,
Yeah. Sorry, it was a question I meant to ask before we got into the New Zealand thing, and I wouldn't mind coming back to that too, because I'm fascinated. But because your work is so technology driven, do you tend to try to keep up with sort of because obviously there's been huge leaps and bounds as far as the technology in performance capture goes since its initial start. Do you try to keep up with what's going on technologically so that you can be, or are you one of those guys who're just like, guys, put me in the suit and I'll just do my thing? Like I'm a
No.
How close are you to that?
Yeah, I'm 100% that tech nerd.
Yeah.
I love understanding how it works. Because, for a long time I was just like, well, I mean, maybe I could just do this myself,
How'd that work
out? Well,
yeah.
I mean, I'm still the guy in the suit. So.
Right? Yeah.
But I have tried to keep up with the tech, because I think knowing where the tech is going and where it currently is helps understand the way that the process of making this kind of work works. So knowing that now we have real-time feedback, knowing that we have live comp into fully rendered backgrounds and scenes, I know that we can be fast. I know that we can be quick. I know that now that like subtle changes in the character can be read, but I also know that when it breaks, it's going to break big.
Right.
Like, so if something goes down when we're capturing, we could be out for like 40, 50 minutes because they need to like restart things and reboot things or reprogram things. And I just feel like trying to have knowledge of how it works, getting knowledge of the back end, to use some developer speak. When you understand the back end, you kind of have a little more grace for when the front end breaks.
Right.
And you can be a bit more understanding when someone's just like, okay, look, we just need to change one of the, like, there's a batch script that's gone haywire, so we're just going to rewrite it. And sometimes it's easier for them to just be like, we'll handle it, don't worry about it. So.
And how much has the technology changed how you do your job, like how you do the performance capture? And is there anything that you used to do that you no longer do because of the technology advancements that you kind of wish was maybe still around?
Ooh, honestly, I don't. I know there are some old school purists who like it back when it was more. It required a different kind of imagination when I started, because there wasn't real-time feedback. The detail was very, very, very basic, and it would take a lot longer to see any kind of finished product.
Right.
So it required a lot more faith and a lot more creativity or imagination to get where you needed to go. At the moment, I feel like we're in a situation where there's much more time to collaborate because it's right there. And we can try something and be like, oh, look, that doesn't work. How can we change it? How can we fix it? and having conversations with a department like Motion Edit, we'll be like, we'll have a situation where a character is not human proportions. Their arms are longer, or their chest is bigger, or their head is higher. And so we have to have a conversation about what are we trying to achieve? Do we need the 3D model to have its hand by its mouth up here? Or do we need a truthful performance from a performer picking something up and putting it in their mouth?
Right.
And because Motion Edit is so good now, they're like, give us the real truthful human performance. And what we will do is we will remap that to Kong, whose arms are massive and is like, his chest is so broad, he almost has no neck.
Right.
So when Kong turns his head, he can't do this.
Right.
Because this part of his jaw, which is massive, will suddenly intersect this part of his chest and shoulders, which are even bigger. So what they need, they go, instead of going, just turn your head this much and then stop, we have to find a nice middle ground between, my character wants to look this way, but I need to know that this character, instead of just turning the head, will probably turn his entire body to move.
Yes.
So that kind of collaboration of like finding the nitty gritty and seeing the little subtle changes is really helpful. Back in the day, it was like
You had none of that.
a digital stick figure.
Right.
And then you'd find months later, they're like, "Ugh, we got to reshoot that because the arm suddenly can't do this." So,
Right. And I love your passion for it is bleeding through you talking about it so much. Like, I didn't even need to ask you that question because clearly you're into the technology side of it, just how into it you're talking about. No, that's fantastic. I love seeing that kind of passion for somebody. Like what's the old saying that we have here on this side of the pond? Like, if you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life. I'm sure some of those days get pretty long, but at the end of the day, you clearly have a passion and a love for what you're doing.
Yeah, on those long days, man, that's what gets you through.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
you just gotta, when you're sitting there, in like 60 kgs of silicon and acrylics, sweating buckets, and like your vision is dizzy because you're overheated. You have to really find that happy place and go back to like childish 8-year-old Allan being like, I'm being a monster. Yay.
I love your constant reference to 8-year-old Allan. That's such a cool thing.
He's the only dude that keeps me going, man.
I have to drive a forklift for a living. I don't get to be 8-year-old Jeff when I'm driving the forklift around. It just super doesn't work. I wish I could. It super doesn't work for me. So I'm glad you get to channel that when you're doing the things that you're doing for sure. Are you okay? So they are coming out with it. There was a trailer that dropped for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Are you involved in that production?
I am. We did performance capture for it. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be looking forward to this one.
It's a new story.
From what I'm understanding, it's like the first of a new trilogy, essentially, that they're looking to.
I think
assuming based on whether this would go well or not, but I don't get the sense that it's like the fourth in the chain. No. They're trying to launch it again, type of thing. Yeah. Because the first trilogy was fascinating, and then of course before that you're all the actual like physical makeup thing. Do you think what you do you think your industry is going to get to a point where there's really not going to be a need for like physical makeup anymore, like especially on the scale of the original Planet of the Apes films where you had hundreds of actors in physical costumes? Do you think motion capture and performance capture is going to get to a point where that's not really on the menu anymore, or do you think there's always going to be a need for that based on whatever the production might be?
I think so. I think there's in my opinion, there's too much magic in physical, in the physical production. Like when you have makeup and prosthetics and set and costume, it's magical. It's magical to have that tangible, real other world that you're in. I mean, and then you look at like, I would be very surprised if someone like Guillermo del Toro would give up on that. He loves it too much.
And like what he loves
animation and he loves visual effects. He does, but he loves physical as well. Same with Peter Jackson loves the physical.
Yeah.
And I think I think the two of them are just going to go side by side, and it's going to be based on the director. It's going to be based on the project. It's going to be based on the studio. And I hope it never disappears because I love that magic. Way back filming the BFG, we were in Vancouver, out in Burnaby, in this old Sears factory, big old warehouse. And for one of the scenes, they rebuilt a scale replica of a street in London. They had cobbled stones, they had the shop fronts, They had lights. The pub had working taps. And to be able to step through these big roller doors into a physical other world you can't get that magic elsewhere,
Yeah.
And I feel like those two will run side by side, because there are things you can do in one that you can't do in other, and both of them are so valid and so wonderful that I hope they're going to keep on going.
Is that something you're interested in doing? Is it getting into the live action stuff, but still kind of a little bit on the monster side, like some heavy makeup stuff? Like if there was, is that because I would think your skills would transfer over to that quite well.
Well, that's how I got my start.
Yeah,
like I was doing creature work and prosthetic work before I did performance capture.
Oh, you did?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I did that like 2 days on the Halo film.
Oh,
but then after that, there were like 3 or 4 other projects that required prosthetics. We did like a zombie thing, and we did weird monsters and stuff. So I was doing, and there is a gentleman that I started my conversation with all those years ago called Shane Rungy, and anyone who's in the industry knows him. He's like the New Zealand grandfather of creature work. He's one of the oldest and best at his.
So he's
job.
the Stan Winston of New Zealand, basically. Is that kind of what you would say? Yeah. Okay.
He was doing it first, and he did it so well. And he's like this massive Māori dude. He's built like a unit.
Yeah.
And he was doing it for so long, and he created opportunities for the rest of us. And he shared his knowledge and his experience with the rest of us. And there's something to be said about like what it like to do that stuff, to put the suit on and have the weird muscles and claws and pick up the axe and turn your head and you've got big minotaur horns or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like, this is like it's
pretty cool, right? I mean,
like that's why you cosplay, right?
Yeah, of course.
And
we get that live reaction, and we get to physically portray that particular character.
Yeah, there's something about becoming the character when you're in the suit, right?
Yeah.
When you're in the skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I guess you don't get that when you're doing motion performance, because
there's a lot more imaginative work.
Yeah.
Which has got to be a million times harder. I can't even imagine having to put yourself in that.
I don't know if it's harder. Like there was a question there about, do you get some sort of cooling system underneath the costumes?
Yeah.
Like that is the hardest thing about creature work. It is usually uncomfortable and like you can't breathe, or like your body can't regulate its temperature. And a lot of the time they're not designed to be moved in. No. We had our good friend Matt Taylor on last year, and he was Nemesis in one of the Resident Evil movies. And that's what he was talking about, because he's physically in that suit. He's having to carry this 60-pound gun, and it's just long days. He's got all these prosthetics on, just massively uncomfortable. You love doing it, but it's not like, hey, sign me up for that every time. That is hard.
That's definitely some hard work.
Yeah, one of the biggest things you need in this game is endurance.
I can't even imagine. Our producer Jenna is asking, what other monsters out there do you admire? Or think were very well done? Who would you love to perform as? Is there like a white whale for Allan Henry to portray monster wise? That
monster wise.
I mean, I feel like once you've been Kong, I mean, like that's like a
how do you go bigger than Kong?
King Kong. I mean, what do you want?
Well, it's funny because before I was King Kong, that was my answer. I was like, yeah, King Kong.
Of course. How is it
not? We did. I had a little attempt at some Godzilla stuff.
Yeah.
And that was fun, but I think I enjoyed Kong more because of how much more human Kong is.
Right.
But oh man, monsters. Like if we go back to the top 10 monster list.
Well, it doesn't have to be a monster, right? Like any kind of character, or is there anything specific you'd love to do as far as a performance actor, right? Or performance capture?
At the moment.
Yeah, I feel like you're at such a pinnacle. I'll tell you what. I used to cosplay a lot of Spider-Man, and because immediately when we were talking about this, I thought, oh, like maybe like a xenomorph or maybe something like that. But then I'm like I had to stop doing Spider-Man because I turned 50 this year, and I can't make my body physically move like that anymore to do all the cool Spider-Man poses. I'm watching 21-year-old dudes do this, and I'm like, I can't do that anymore. So when I think of other things that like what would Allan be really like? What would be like the top monsters that you do? I'm like, man alive, being something like that would be such a pain in the ass, wouldn't it? A little bit.
It's I mean, it's a good question. I've had the wonderful joy and opportunity and good fortune to do so many monsters and superheroes and supervillains and crazy characters. It's tough. Like there are performers that I really truly admire, like Terry Notary, who was my movement teacher, and like some of the work that Andy does, and performers like Toby Kebbell, who was Koba in the
original trilogy. The original Planet of the Apes
his
trilogy.
work is
Not
like
the original, but
he was Koba. He was so good.
No, he's fantastic.
He was so good. And there's lots of performers that I really admire, and I would like to kind of do the things that they do.
Now, is there so while you're is there a particular IP though that maybe you would like to be part of that you haven't had?
100%.
Yeah, I figured that might be the easier question for you to answer.
Yeah.
What is that? What is the Mount Rushmore of like IPs that Allan Henry would like to be involved in?
For Allan Henry,
yes,
and Kathleen Kennedy, I hope you're listening.
It had to be Star Wars.
I've never been in a Star Wars film.
Yeah, and that has to happen. How does that not happen?
Because they've never done a Star Wars film here in New Zealand.
All right. Okay. Fair. Okay. Fair enough.
But that is the two films that 8-year-old Allan would always go back to when I was a kid. Was Star Wars, and Enter the Dragon. So those were the two films that I would always watch as a kid.
Okay. And
growing up, kind of trying to find ways to be part of the Star Wars universe would be that's I think that's the goal. I think that's the lofty heights that Allan Henry wants to portray.
Yeah. I can't blame you. That's every kid's dream from our generation.
But to be fair, there's a lot of sci-fi that I haven't been involved in that I'd want to.
Yeah.
Like Trek would be great. Being involved in like Doctor Who would be fantastic. My good friend Frankie Adams was nice.
Yeah.
My good friend Frankie Adams was in The Expanse, and I love
The Expanse so much. Oh my!
I did some work with her, and she had such a good time. Also, to be honest, any work where I get to work with Shorey Aghdashloo is going to be a good day. That woman is phenomenal.
She was Avasarala on The Expanse. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, oh my goodness. She stole every scene she was in. She was so good. Yeah.
Just anything where I could be involved with her would be great.
Yeah.
But also, for me, for Allan Henry, it's Star Wars.
And do you find that getting back to New Zealand, I guess a little bit. So do you find being in New Zealand at the same time rewarding, but also kind of limiting when it comes to you've not been involved in Star Wars because you're based out of New Zealand, or essentially at the end of the day? Because I know you came to Vancouver for production. You have traveled for productions in the past. Yeah. But does that kind of limit you a little bit because you're New Zealand based?
Yeah. Being
at the bottom of the planet, I think is how you described it. Yeah.
Being at the bottom of the planet, it is a beautiful part of the planet.
Yeah.
And I love living here.
Yeah.
But it's an expensive part of the planet. So getting people to and from this country is expensive.
Right.
And a lot of the time, this is probably very cynical of me, but studios will always opt for the cheaper option.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And yes, I could, like Doug said, I could put myself where the work is, and I could head on over to the States and go and hang out in LA or Atlanta or wherever it is that they're making it.
I think Toronto's the place to be, really.
Oh, a lot of productions in Atlanta too.
Star Wars really is like Toronto and Pinewood over in London.
Yeah, of course.
But I have my son and his mum here, and I have a really good support network here. So for me, I would rather try and, I talk about stacking the deck in my favor, and I have to really weigh up whether I want to go and put myself where the work is and leave so much of this behind and try and juggle, what happens with my son is 11. So
that's a tender age to be hopping around the globe.
Yeah. And he's at the moment very focused on dad at the moment. So
yeah.
And in saying that, next year I have some projects lined up offshore, and I'm making sure that I take him with me to those.
Right.
Oh, nice.
So rather than, because he didn't come with me to Windsor.
Right.
just because he was at school. So next year I have some other things lined up, and I've made sure that we allocate time for him to come with me and be at those things with me.
Do you have any? So I know we can't talk about future projects, but do you have any appearances? Has Windsor started kind of a little bit got the ball rolling? Is there anything that you can talk about 2024 that you've kind of got coming up? That's
no, unfortunately, nothing has been fully confirmed.
right.
So there are some offers that are currently in negotiation and in discussion.
Yep.
There is another convention happening in the States.
Right.
Since I joined up with Japan's Legends, who were the agency that brought over those wonderful guests from Japan
for the Super G, of course.
Yeah, for Super G.
Yeah.
They've got some projects in negotiation. So there are some things happening next year. I mean, this isn't an appearance, but I've been invited to talk at a VFX conference in Nairobi in Africa next year.
Oh, wow.
And again, because of that support network, the visual effects company that is sponsoring me to go over was started by two friends of mine from Weta FX, who then, the wife is Kenyan. She moved back to Kenya and started a VFX company.
Wild.
So because of that connection, they invited me over, and I said,
yeah, of course.
Can I bring my son? And they were like, of course, we'd love to have you and your family, because we're all friends, and they know my son and I know their daughter. So we're trying to, there's that stuff happening. And the front half of my year is pretty front loaded with a lot of work and a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
And then the second half of the year, who knows? Nothing. I mean, that's, if anything, that's the block I've set aside for Star Wars.
Kathleen Kennedy, if you're listening, paging Kathleen Kennedy to the courtesy phone.
At this point, I think you may need to give Dave Filoni a call.
Well, I mean, we talked about this. He's creative, but she's the money. You got to talk to the money first before you talk to the creative, because if there's no money, there's no creative. So
yeah, she paid us a visit on the BFG in 2015, and
lovely, nice.
Well, she would have been still working. Oh no, she would have been with. No, who would she have been with? No, she would have been with Lucasfilm in 2015. She wouldn't have been with Steven Spielberg anymore.
No. It was because it was an Amblin Entertainment film.
Amblin,
which I think is under the Disney umbrella.
Yes,
I believe so. Yeah.
What? So Windsor was your first official guest spot at a convention, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Was that the first convention that you'd actually attended?
No. I've attended a few smaller version conventions that we have here in New Zealand.
So convention, and not to talk any grief, because I love Jeremy and I love that community in Windsor. I've been part of that community for years and years and years now as a cosplayer and such. But that convention was not. I don't want to. It may not have been quite indicative of the conventions that we would have in this area, especially a convention of that size and that length. Did it still maybe kind of like give you a little bit of the butt? Like, would that be something you'd be amenable to, like traveling to do more conventions to that point?
1,000,000%.
Okay. Because we do have one of the biggest conventions in the world here called Fan Expo. It happens in Toronto. It happens in late August. And you said the back half of your year is pretty wide open. It's 4 days for that one. But
feel free to talk to everyone.
So that's what I'm saying. So guys, they just posted something. Recommend guests for us to get for Fan Expo. Recommend your boy Allan Henry. As you can,
this guy over
with us.
Expo.
He's got fascinating stories to tell about working in the industry, a part of the industry that we don't really get to talk about a whole lot here. We've talked to actors and we've talked to guys that have worked on the technical side of things, but we certainly never talked to somebody that does what Allan does in the performance motion capture artist. So,
yeah, we've been lucky to speak to guys in the suit, but never really in the actual motion capture side. So it's real interesting to.
Oh, I would love any opportunity to do more conventions. It was such a great experience because, again, in New Zealand, everyone knows everyone. So this idea of anonymity is great, but also everyone who knows the stuff that I do, they're like, oh yeah, that's Allan. He does the mocap stuff.
Right.
But it was the first time to go outside of New Zealand and meet an international, for want of a better term, fan base.
Right.
To have people, who don't know me and who aren't from New Zealand, like that idea, like want to talk to me. To hark back to what you and Steve talked about with that imposter syndrome. Yeah, it's real. It's real hard to fight it. But when you have a bunch of people you don't know come up and be like, "Hey, we would like to validate the work that you've done."
Right.
It's a nice way for you to. For me, it was a nice way for me to remind myself. That's right. I have done some cool things that I really, really enjoy, and I'm good at it, and it's really, and it's worthy, and it's.
Oh no, it's 100% worthy. But where I
Yeah.
think you're different from a lot of the guests that they end up bringing in, as a guy that's been doing this for 10 plus years, going to conventions and interacting with guests, have been a guest myself and on the cosplay side of things, your approachability and how interactive and how generous you are with your time with the people coming up to speak to you, or you even approaching them. Like at that after party, you just walk over our table and start talking to us. And I'm like, oh my God, like this guy, like he's just coming over and engaging with it. You don't have to do that. And a lot of them don't. And I think that sets you apart from a lot of people in your position that would never in a million years take the time to do that, and then forge a relationship and some talk with us, and then come on to our little geeky podcast that we do here for the last couple of years. All of that, I think, speaks to your character and how well you interact with people that are clearly fans of you and fans of your work. So kudos to you, man, for taking that time and being that accessible with people and having such a great attitude about it. Because it's refreshing, I have to tell you. Yeah.
Well, it's honestly, it's the only way it kind of works here in New Zealand. Like, you got to find that community, and you got to, and also, you like genuinely, I like meeting new friends.
Yeah.
And I like getting to know people, and every person I meet always has something really interesting that I would never have guessed about.
And especially when, like you were talking about earlier, about finding your people and getting those like-minded individuals that you can share in things with and create that community around you. That's not the easiest thing to do. And so when you find those people, you tend to hold on to them pretty tight, because that's
and it's not going to be everyone you meet.
No, of course not.
Like, there was some people in Windsor at the convention that I met, and I was like, oh, I don't think we're going to vibe.
Right.
You're like, I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm not going
right. No, of course.
But like, we're not going to vibe. So I will treat you. I'll still treat you with dignity and respect. And
of course.
Thankfully, pretty much everyone I met was awesome. So right.
We're Canadians. We try to bring that as much as we can.
Well, another thing you were saying, I think in the pre-show is you were actually able to meet Kaylee for the first time, which you had never actually met.
Yeah.
You did a movie with her literally, and you never actually met her until you got to Windsor.
Yep.
Hilarious.
Yeah, so she did all of her stuff in principal photography.
So for those watching, who is Kaylee, and what's the production that we're talking about?
So Kaylee Hoddle played Gia in Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yes.
And so she was on set working with like stand-ins and stunt performers and like blue balls on sticks and like cutouts or whatever. And then I had to kind of look at her footage, and we had conversations about what was happening in the scene and what Kong was doing. And then I would interact, and they would kind of make that, like, connect the dots in the film. And then the first time I met her was at the convention, and it was wild. It was so wild. And she was great. She was so cool. Her and her mum was super cool.
Do you tend to catch up or keep up with some of the more ancillary projects that kind of maybe surround because the monsterverse is like a whole thing now. So now, like, I'm personally watching Monarch Legacy of Monster. I think that the 6th episode, I think the 7th episode drops tonight or tomorrow.
Yep.
Do you try to keep up with that a little bit on the periphery, so that, because it might impact what you guys are doing in that particular, like, especially with Godzilla and Kong with the new Empire?
Yeah, definitely. And also, I mean, I grew up watching Godzilla films, so it's been a part of the reason why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't watch much of the Showa era. I kind of came in near the Heisei era.
Yeah.
But yeah, all those big monsters and weird creatures, and I was like, it's obviously a dude in a suit. And then over the years, I was like, wow, this is a skill and a real, like, it's really hard work, and I value it. And it was, I love that stuff. Like, I have actually tonight, I've booked a session at an IMAX cinema for my son and I to watch Godzilla -1.
Yes.
Nice.
Everybody's talking about this film. Everybody on planet Earth is talking about this film.
Yeah, I saw the trailers, and I was like, yes.
It looks so amazing. It looks, and everybody in there that's seen it, it's like, this is it. Like, this is what we want. This is exactly what we want.
And I want to show that. I want to show that film to my son, because he loves Japan. He loves watching it. He's learning Japanese. He really trying to find out more about the culture.
Yeah.
And I want to show him -1 before I show him Godzilla versus Kong.
Right.
Because what Toho do with Godzilla versus what Legendary do with Godzilla are very different, and and you have to recognize what those differences are.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was having a conversation with someone about Shin Godzilla, and they were like, I don't understand it. And I was like, you don't have to. It's different.
No. Yes.
Shin is a different idea.
Yeah.
And
Different
the legendary
interpretations
Godzilla
of that
versus
character.
Kong,
The character's been around since the 50s. Come on, guys. Like, we're going to get different interpretations of the character for sure.
Yeah. And I have a sneaky, I have a sneaky photo of me with one of the original King Kong posters, like one of the original first ones from like the 30s.
The 30s, yeah. Wow.
Like, it's very sneaky. Yeah, Peter Jackson has a collection of old film memorabilia.
Oh, okay. That seems like the most Pete Jackson thing ever. Of course he does, right?
He really does. He's trying to open like a film museum, which, I don't know. It sounds like he just wants people to pay for him to store his stuff. Like, if he's going to put Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in there, that's fine. But unless I get to drive it,
then it's not worth your time. No, that makes
I can't even sit in that thing.
No. Our friend Teresa saying it was fun to meet you, kind, friendly, and so damn talented. And Misty Wing saying the same thing. He seems like such a genuine guy. I can tell you, the Allan that we're getting here is basically the Allan that we met in Windsor. So it's not that there's no. If there's a secret Allan, we haven't met him yet. This is the dude. He's super nice, super friendly.
Guys, we're already 15 minutes over our hour, but I do want to quickly, again, I know you can't really talk much about the new movie, but how is Kong different in the new movie versus what you did in the last movie?
Well, the biggest difference is in the last movie, he thought he was the only one. He thought he was alone. And in this one, he realizes he's not. And that changes a lot of things. So it changes his reason for doing what he's doing is different. Whereas the previous one was like, they wanted to find, they wanted to use Kong as an excuse to get to Hollow Earth. And then he got there and realized he was part of a legacy. And then, stuff happens with Godzilla, and then stuff happens with Mechagodzilla. This one is now he's aware of kind of that he was part of this thing. And then new characters arrive, which change his reasons for doing what he does.
It does seem it's more character focused on Kong and expansion of sort of his world and his circle as opposed to on the Godzilla side.
Yeah,
because we're not giving anything away. This is all in the trailers.
It's in the trailer.
Like you said, he's not the only one. So clearly that's going to impact him as a character throughout. And they've done a brilliant job.
Titan. Like they're introducing a new Titan.
Yeah. And they've done such a brilliant job of giving Kong so much. I literally just rewatched a couple of the things just to kind of get in a mood to talk to you and what they've been able to do with Kong and how much emotion they've been able to bring to that character. How much they've been able to anthropomorphize that character and bring us like, especially like the really deep close-ups of the eyes to really give you an insight into his soul almost, which is a credit to you, obviously, but. I like how that's going. Like, I like how they're taking that because obviously of the two characters, I feel like Kong is the more relatable of the two. It gives us some, you know what I mean? Like we don't know any giant actual lizards. We know an ape. It's just a big ape, but we know apes. We have apes in our everyday life.
Exactly. So, that's the way in. That's the way in for the audience. Because like Godzilla is unequivocally king of the monsters.
Right.
Right. And he has been a bad guy sometimes, and he's been an anti-hero sometimes, but he's ultimately kind of set up as this. Nowadays, he's kind of set up as this weird kind of apex protector of kind of
a little bit of Deus Ex Machina, a little bit at the end of the day, right? Like when you have a problem, better call Godzilla a little bit, right?
Yeah, and also like when you look at like Godzilla versus Kong, like Kong got his ass beat 2 times in a row,
right,
by Godzilla. Like, and then Mechagodzilla turns up, and suddenly Godzilla's like, "Oh, okay, this is a bit more of a challenge." And because he then decides to partner up with Kong, that's how they can overcome this new challenge. So, like, Godzilla has his own reasons for doing what he's doing. Kong is the one where you can see him analyzing situations, figuring things out, making choices, having emotional reactions to things. And I mean, I'm not trying to say that that's to pull anything away from Godzilla, but I think they because, as you say, that recognition of an ape for humans.
Yes,
that's the way in, and I think that's why Weta and the directors really focus on him having such an emotive face.
A huge,
Well,
and I
I
think they
feel
made a
like-
good point in Kong Skull Island. I know that wasn't a production you're part of, but they made a point to say he's still growing. He's essentially an adolescent. So he is evolving as we're seeing him film after film after film, because he's not, he's also aging, like he's becoming an adult, and he's learning these things and being part of this greater universe and world. And now all the Hollow Earth stuff, and now finding out he's not the only one. I just love that they've created an arc for this. What at the end of the day was just a guy that everybody associated with climbing a building and falling in love with a human woman. Now he's this nuanced character that we get to explore and learn more about. And it's super cool for you that you get to bring him to life like that. That's so wild to me that you get to do that.
It's pretty great. And also in this recent, like as we saw in the previous one and this one about to come out, Kong is the one who has stronger connections to humans.
Right.
Like like the other big monsters. I mean, I know that Mothra was kind of a protector of humanity, but monsters like Anguirus and King Ghidorah, they're like, it feels like their focus is like, I want to challenge the boss. Like,
right.
I want to fight to be the apex.
Right.
They haven't been shown having that much of a connection with the humans as much as Kong has.
Right. Even Godzilla at the end of the day.
Kong
definitely has more of a connection with the human.
Yeah, and he has more emotions, and he has more complexity to what he does and how he moves, and where Godzilla is just, it's about taking down the bad guy, right? It's about taking down the next monster, right? Like which like that's kind of the point. Like, it's, if you harken back to films like Pacific Rim, the point was big robot fight big monster. That's the point.
Yes.
And then you can pepper in all this other stuff if you want to, but the point is big robot fight big monster. Godzilla is king of monsters. So something challenges him, he has to try and beat it to prove he's king of the monsters. I feel
like with the Godzilla film, though, you still have to introduce a human element. And I know they do the same thing with the Kong movies too, but I feel like with the Kong movies, it's not as important because Kong will bring that. He'll bring that emotionality to it, that character growth. Whereas with Godzilla, you have to have a human allegory for the audience to interact with, because you can't interact with a giant atomic breath lizard. Whereas with Kong, you can see a little bit of yourself in Kong at the end of the day, right? Because a lot of the day, it just looks like he's just a guy trying to, like, just, as Boba Fett would say, just a man making his way through the galaxy. He's just an ape making his way through the world. He's just doing his thing.
I love
it. And shit to him. You know what I mean? It's
imagine Timura Morrison doing the voice. I'm just an ape trying to make my way in the universe.
Make my way through the hollow earth. That's right.
Yeah. But he is. He just like Kong is kind of just turning into this like grumpy old man who just wants to kind of live his life.
I can relate, man. I get it. Right? I totally get it.
Yeah.
Kong and I, we're like this.
Yeah.
So you're 2024. So can you talk about anything that you're going to be doing in 2024 other than possibly go to Nairobi with your son for the VFX talk, or is there anything else that you can share with us?
Not at the moment, actually.
Okay.
No. The current project I'm on goes from January to April.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a live action CGI kind of hybrid film.
Okay.
So there are sections where we're filming all of the virtual digital stuff, and then there are sections where we're filming the live action. So it's kind of ballooning out across the first half of the year. So that'll be me for most of that, apart from like appearances in like D&D podcasts that I might do with my friends, or things like that.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I knew we'd have to get back to some tabletop RPG at some point or other. Clearly, you're a fan, based on your sweater.
Yeah.
How do you find time to nerd out with your dice set and your friends to play? Do you have a regular group that you get to play with, or is this kind of like a catch as can thing?
Well, it's a little from column A, a little from column B.
Yeah.
There's a group of friends that I meet online. We play a lot of online video games together. We've been playing Destiny 2 for a long time, and we kind of got onto the subject of playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we've been involved in a Curse of Strahd campaign for like two and a half years now.
Curse of Strahd,
we try to play once a week, but scheduling changes for people. I have some friends here in Wellington that I try and meet with as often as I can, and I have a group that I make time for once a month. and we get together and I'm running that game. But I have 3 different systems cooking for next year, so that I want to run because I love the systems and I want to introduce my friends to them. So I'm going to run a Deadlands campaign, which is like the Wild West, but magic and monsters and spooky.
All right.
Cool. Lancer, which is just Neon Genesis Evangelion, and probably like a game of Kids on Bikes or Tales from the Loop, which is just what it sounds like. You're a kid on a bike. Think like Stand By Me, Goonies, E.T.
So very Spielberg, very
You're a bunch of kids, and like it's very Stranger Things.
Of course.
You're a bunch of kids. Weird things are happening.
Yeah,
but you're still kids, and you're the only ones who can figure it out.
And so still tabletop RPG, but 3 completely different systems.
Different systems, yeah.
And then you're going to run each of these games as you learn the systems, or you guys are going to kind of do it as a group and together and try to none of you have played any of these systems before.
I have.
You have. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've played a bunch, and these were 3 that I'm like, I know I have some friends who would be interested in these kinds of games. Like I have one friend, Scott, who really loves the crunchiness and the mechanics.
Yep.
And he loves Lancer because he's like, oh, this and abilities and here and do this and I roll the dice and do the math.
Yeah.
And then I have some friends who really love kind of more narrative.
The role play aspect of it.
Yeah, which is where like Kids on Bikes lends itself because a lot of it is based around narrative.
Yeah.
And Deadlands is like it's cowboys and monsters.
No, how do you not like Cowboys and Monsters? That's
we put on our Stetsons and we get some fake 6-shooters and
yeah, for sure. Collaborating cosplay. Julie Steve, the Groot, is saying this gentleman is an absolute delight. I hope to meet him at a convention soon. And he's saying hearing,
I hope so as well.
And I mentioned this early, but hearing your passion come through everything you said was incredibly obvious and touching to hear your side of giant creatures. Yeah, for sure. I mentioned that earlier. You clearly have a passion for this, and you're kind of lucky enough to work in that in the field that you clearly have such passion for. So. JS, I'm still hogging all the time, man. I don't want to be. I don't.
No, that's okay. I think
I'm wrapping her up.
Yeah, I think it's about that time. Guys, if you want to see what this guy does, make sure you go check out Godzilla vs. Kong, or better yet, the new Empire, April 12th, on my birthday to boot.
Ooh.
So
look at that.
I'm not
clearly.
saying
yeah. We're clearly gonna have to get together and
and go check that out. Any chance you might be able to rejoin us after that's out so we can actually talk details about the movie?
Yes.
Let's put him on the spot right in the middle of the podcast, guys. Let's put him on the spot live on the podcast.
Because as far as I know, the project I'm working on at the moment, our final week of principal photography is the week after.
Oh,
so perfect. 2 weeks after the film comes out, I reckon we'd have time. To be honest, I love you guys. I would love to come and chat some more and be nerdy.
We love you too.
I keep telling everyone about the super cool people that I met when I was at the convention. So for everyone I met at the Northern National, thank you for improving my life. Did you? Oh, man, I didn't show you this. Just a quick kind of side thing.
Dude, take as much time as you want.
For when I was at the Northern National, the MCs found out that there were a bunch of like Canadian sweets and treats and delights and desserts I hadn't tried. So every day people were bringing me things like coffee crisps and like Dr. Peppers and things.
Yeah.
Which was great because I love sweets.
Yeah.
And then we had a day where they realized I hadn't had butter tarts. And so,
oh my God.
I hadn't. So they made me, and what they did was they found out that I hadn't tasted them. Christian Convery hadn't tasted them. He's from Vancouver.
Yeah.
And Vanessa hadn't tasted them, and she's Canadian. So it became this like live panel where we.
It is mostly Eastern and Quebec Canadian. It's not really a Western Canadian treat. Yeah.
Lex did buy coffee crisps for me.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Coffee crisps. That's true. So we had this tasting, and I mean the butter tarts blew my mind. They were so good,
amazing. So good. I have some homemade ones here right now. They're great.
There was this wonderful person helping run the 501st stall.
Yep.
And they saw that I hadn't tried them, so they literally, like, I don't know if you can see it, they hand wrote me the recipe.
Nice.
Awesome.
To make my own butter tarts. So for Christmas, I am going to make butter tarts.
I can tell you, as a tried and true Canadian and person that does get involved in this, there's going to be a trial and error phase.
Sure.
Like I know people that like bake cookies and pies and everything all the time, and they could just rattle that thing off all the time. But the subtle nuances of the butter tart just keeps kind of like eluding them a little bit. They get a little bit too runny, a little too firm, or whatever. So I'm just prepping you. There may be some trial and error. Some people might be eating just some very, very sloppy butter tarts. No one's gonna be mad because it's
so delicious.
So did you get a chance to actually have a butter tart?
I had many. Yes.
Yeah. Now, did you
raisin or no raisin?
I was just gonna say typically it's raisin and or pecan. I don't know how you guys say it in New Zealand.
Pecan.
Yeah.
All right. Did you try both?
I didn't have any of the raisin ones. No.
Oh, the raisins.
Oh, that's my favorite.
There was one I had that had, I think it was pecan in it or pecan, and another one that was
plain
maple.
Oh yeah. Sometimes there's neither, but
yeah.
Like the ones I have here with me right now are raisin, and that's definitely my favorite for sure.
Oh yeah, I love the raisin ones.
Oh,
excellent.
So good.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah. But curious to how you have to update us when you try to make them.
I will. Yeah.
Make sure you post some pictures and you tag the Geek to go.
Yeah.
I will.
Perfect.
Allan,
before we go, anything you want to pitch? Any if you want to rename, talk about your socials again, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me at Allan Henry _official on Insta, which kind of means I'm also on Threads, but I don't often go on there.
Same.
Yeah.
I think I've got a Blue Sky as well. Again, there's nothing on there. I don't do much on social media. I boosted from X/Twitter a long time ago.
Terrible. Yeah, no thanks.
But yeah, I'm on Facebook because I have aunties and uncles who are on Facebook, and that's the only way we can communicate. But honestly, like if I had to plug stuff, watch Godzilla vs. Kong, sure. Watch big monster films, watch superhero films. Go and see the things that you love. Go and do the stuff that you love. Play tabletop role-playing games, play video games, go bike riding, go cliff jumping, dress up in costumes with your friends and hang out. Do the stuff that really lights up 8-year-old you, because that's what gets you through, and that's what I always want to tell people to do, because that's what I try and do.
The charm life he leads.
I love that we got to meet a little bit of 8-year-old Allan here today. That was awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah. Allan, listen, thank you so much for coming on, man. That was awesome. It was fantastic meeting you in Windsor, dude. Having you on. This is wicked. We're definitely going to have you on again. Anytime you're free and you want to be on, you have my email address. Shoot me a message. We will have you on every week if we can.
Excellent.
And thank you guys for everybody that joined us. Allan today for the last hour and a half. You guys were amazing in the chat, keeping up with us, asking pertinent questions of Allan. Please go check out his Instagram and definitely check out his work, because in April we're going to have a brand new movie, Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. Make sure you're going to be checking that out as well. The trailer is already out for it. If you're not sure where to find it, you can actually find it on Allan's social. So go check that out as well. And hopefully we'll get to have Allan on again. But thanks everybody for joining us this week. We do appreciate you guys. We will be back next week for our end of the year wrap up. We'll be going over all of 2023, including talking to Allan, obviously, and getting to meet him at Windsor. We'll talk about all the different cons we were at, all the different guest spots that we did, all the booths that we did, all the events that we ran. And then we're going to take a week off, and then we'll see you guys in the new year, where we're going to have a whole new thing that's going to be going on. And just so you guys know, too, I was, just as an aside, I did visit our friends at the London Brewing Co-op last night. I was there, and I was speaking with one of the owner-managers there. So we are getting ready. We're going to meet in January to organize our May the 4th Star Wars event, sponsored by the Geeks and Company, at London Brewing Co-op. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be discussing a new beer that they're going to brew for us specifically with our name and label on it. So May the 4th.
Last year was a small batch. It's we're
like
7 o'clock. No good.
By the way, that is also the same day as Free Comic Book Day. So we're going to try to bridge the gap. In the morning, we're going to hit downtown, hit Free Comic Book Day. And then the evening, we're going to be, or the afternoon and the evening, we're going to be at London Brewing Co-op celebrating Star Wars with all of our Star Wars friends. So stay tuned for all of that, guys. But definitely join us next week. Allan, again, man, thank you so much for joining. I know it's, by the way, guys, what is it? You're 1:30 p.m. on Friday now in New Zealand.
Yeah, I'm talking to you from the future.
Thanks again, man. You were so forthcoming. We can't thank you enough for coming onto the podcast and sharing with us what you do and how you do it. It's fascinating, and I do hope we get to talk to you again for sure. So
my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Perfect.
No, thank you. I think that will be it for this week, though. Make sure you stay geeky, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Geek Boutique podcast. Like always, if you prefer to listen to us, you can find us on all major podcast platforms. Now, make sure you don't forget to click that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell to make sure you never miss an